All right, so this should be the last video in the series on this outdoor kitchen project that we've been working on. Today we're going to be working on grout. On the past projects we talked about the framing and putting on the hardy backer board and setting up the understructure. We did a video on how to cut rocks for the stone veneer and apply them to that hardy backer board, and today we're going to go over the grout and how to apply grout on natural stone. Now it's quite likely if you've ever done any tile work, you've probably worked with grout before and you float grout onto a floor, but that's really only if you have flat ceramic tiles. In this case we're dealing with natural stone that's been naturally cut and chipped, and you don't want to use a float, because it's an irregular structure, it's not flat, and B, because the stone is not sealed with ceramic, and you'll get the grout everywhere and it'll just be a mess. We're going to use a grout bag to push the grout into the grooves, and then go back before it sets and set the shape of the grout, and we'll go over how to do that. But first let's talk about grout and why you put grout into the first place. So grout basically goes, oops, got some glare there. It basically goes in between the joints, and it seals the joints from any kind of water intrusion or anything like that. But in this case, what grout really does is it helps to even out the uneven surfaces. So instead of having just one plane where the grout would set, if it was a ceramic tile, you have a variable plane that can adjust for the different heights and thicknesses of the areas that the stones are matching up, because they're irregular, and so that kind of evens it out, and it gives you a smooth enough surface so that it looks aesthetically pleasing. It is intended to keep water intrusion out, and you can see around the stainless here we've added a grout line to match up with the uneven surfaces. In some of the stainless area we've actually cut a groove into the stone, and then the grout line comes up to the edge of the groove like that. But the idea here is the stainless is flat and level and the stone is not. And you see there's a little groove down here that matches up with the stainless, and then the grout line fills in the gaps where you have cut and fill. So that's the fill portion. On a flat surface you might have really uneven surfaces that you need to match up, and you can see how on this stone there's a nice, from a distance it looks really nice, but when you're sitting on with your elbow on it, there's a nice groove right here that's uneven. And what grout gives you the ability to do, and here I'll show you, is to kind of split the baby with that and go halfway on, halfway off, and it gives you a lot smoother finish. And it also keeps any kind of water from pooling up on the flat surface. So you have kind of a a license to do whatever you want with that. Fill in the grooves or make them as deep or as shallow as you want to split the baby with that. So let's have a look on the back here at some of the grout that we've done. This is some of the grouting that we did around. This is not going to be stainless. This is actually a piece of cedar that we've taped off, and I've got a cedar joint in here. We're going to put a cedar door in here, like a double door, for this storage area right here. So you can use tape to limit the area where the grout's going to affect. And you can see we've taped up some of the area here. We don't want any of the splatter to get down on. That's a really wise decision, because it does fall and get all over the place. It doesn't really stick to the concrete or whatever you got going on, because it's not really set yet, but it's good to keep that down to minimize the cleanup. Some of the other things that grout does is it gives you the ability to mask a joint. So you can see right in here, this joint is in the middle right here, and then we jogged it over a little bit, and then jogged it over again, and then jogged it over again. And what that does is it takes what would otherwise be a straight joint or a split in your unit here, and it makes it almost into a curve. It averages it out, so to your eye it doesn't look like a straight joint. We figured out how to do that after we did this one, and we're going to grout this one today, and you'll see this is just one straight line all the way down. We decided, you know what, after we put those stones in, we should rethink that design. So good thing we did it on the back here. But you can see how just one straight grout line, it says, okay, there's one panel, here's another panel. Well, right here, you really can't find that panel. This panel right here, you can't even see that there's a joint. There's a joint right here because it splits up. And by splitting up that grout line, it makes it so that it almost looks like a curve. It kind of curves around. And we didn't make a curve. Here's another one where we split the joint. You can see it's kind of split up. And that makes it, you know, a little bit more pleasing to the eye. And it breaks it up so that you don't have just a straight line going straight down. So there's some creative things to do there. Let me show you a grout line on the very edge. Here's the very edge of the extents here. You can see I've got one that goes out, one that goes in, out, in, and it splits it up. Even though you know, obviously, this is a corner, instead of just having a solid straight grout line, it goes back and forth to break up the outline of that edge. Did the same thing here. You see, I think that's a really great idea. So, you know, when you're planning out your stonework before you do your grout, make sure that you take into account what those grout lines are going to look like when you get ready to put them in. All right, so let's prep up and get ready and start doing some grout before it gets too hot out here in the Texas sun. All right, so we're going to go ahead and start mixing up some of this grout in a slurry. Don't worry about following the instructions on the bag because it's going to give you the instructions for, you know, doing a floor, which you're going to be floating in. But in this case, we need it to be a bit more soupy, significantly more soupy, in order for it to go through the bag. So what you want to do, I'll show you about what the texture is supposed to be once we get there. But you can ignore the instructions on the bag. You just need to mix some water up and get it to where you like it. You don't need to measure it. One of the other things we're doing that's not in the bag is we're mixing two different colors. There's not a whole lot of colors available in the color palette at the Home Depot, but what you can do with these is, you know, pick between two and split the baby. I keep saying split the baby, but what you do is you take whatever portion that you like to make the next color that you're going to make, and you mix a lighter one with a darker one to get the medium, and there's absolutely no problem with doing that. So when you're at the store looking for colors, if you don't see exactly the color that you like, pick one that is, you know, in the middle, and then buy one bag of each on either side of it, and then just split it in half and mix them together. So that'll work for you. Let's go ahead and get started mixing this stuff up. Another thing, gloves are really important. In different parts of this project, we use different kinds of gloves. For the metal work, we use leather gloves. For the stone work, we used rubber gloves. In this case, you need rubber tipped gloves. You still need to protect your hands from the grout. It has lime in it, but you need some really good dexterity. So get yourself a pair of gloves that don't fit. You want them to be really small to fit on very nicely. I have this pair of firm grip gloves. They breathe well on the back, but they're going to protect your fingers from the grout, and they give you a lot of dexterity, and you know, they got rubber tips, so they're really good for that. So do make sure that you put some gloves on or you'll mess up the skin on your hands really easily. But you can stretch these right on and make them fit really well. You'll have a lot better dexterity if you can feel the tips of your fingers instead of having a floppy thing at the end. So that's kind of important. All right. All right, here's the light color. This is a bone, which is kind of a light beige. I'm gonna put a little bit of that in there. I'm not taking a measurement. It doesn't have to be exact. And I'm going to take an equal portion of this color. This is haystack, which is a little bit closer to beige. And again, you don't need to measure it. The trick here is to make small batches, because the small batches are going to keep you from having too much waste. Once you put this in the bag and you start working it, even in the bag, it will start to get firm. So you need to move it quickly and keep it moving. Small batches will keep you from having to throw out too much. I've been keeping it in here overnight just to keep water off of it. If it tips over, it won't have a catastrophe. But that's the trick here, is just mix them together in approximate proportions. All right, got a little thing of water here, and we're not going to measure that either. We're just going to get it to flow in there. You can see I've used this bucket a couple times, this little pail. You got to clean it out every time you use it. The real trick there is, it doesn't have to be spotless. You just need to make sure that you don't get any pieces that can come off and get stuck inside the applicator hole on your bag. All right, let me cut it there, and we'll come right back and give you a close-up of what the texture should look like. Alright, so this is the texture if you went by the bag that you would be normally doing it. See how it's kind of a peanut butter? This will not go through the pastry bag that we're going to use, because you see it's a little tiny hole. You can adjust this hole from whatever size, but you're not going to get that texture to go through the bag like these little pastry bags that they give you. So what we're going to do is we're going to add some more water. I'm going to show you about what that should look like. Make a place for the water to go. I know if you're into masonry, you're like, no, it's getting too pasty. But really, you need to have it really wet in order to get through the bag. Yeah, get in there. If you're following the channel because you're into classic cars and the car work that I do, you probably also know that you got to get your chores done before you can play and do the things that you really like. So just bear with me while I finish my chores here, and we'll be able to do some more stuff on the MG in the very near future. I'm actually working on some stuff in the garage. I haven't finished those videos, but they're coming up. But anyway, got to have some content out there, and this is what I'm doing this week. So just keep following me, and I'll have more stuff on MGs and classic cars in the very near future. All right, see how that's getting really nice and sloopy? That's about the consistency that you're looking for. We're going to get it nice and even. We still have some puddles in here, but it needs to be sloppy like that. Can you see how sloppy that is? that's going to be easy enough to get that through the pastry bag a whole lot easier. It's creamy. I would say it's like wet whipped cream, or even sloppier than frosting. But it's very soupy. You can see it doesn't stand up on its own anymore. But that's what we're looking for. All right, let's get this back on the tripod so we can show you how to apply it. All right, so first thing I like to do is throw a little water into the pastry bag. It's always good to have a bucket of water around for cleanup and stuff. So we're going to throw some water into this pastry bag just to get it wet. Otherwise, it'll wick off a lot of the water that's currently in the sloop that you just got the right consistency. So just also make sure that there's nothing, any foreign debris or anything in the tip, and it's all clean and ready to go. The insides of these bags has kind of a vinyl material. It's canvas on the outside, but it's kind of plasticky on the inside. But it's not waterproof. The water still wicks out a little bit through the gaps. So just go ahead and I fold it down to make it so that it can stand open on its own a little bit. But we're going to pull that fold out when we get ready to go. Load this sucker up. Try to fit as much of this batch in here as I can, because once I stop moving this batch, it's going to get hard, and so we're going to use it all up. So don't make too much, just make enough for the bag. We're getting close. Pull this fold out of here. We're going to get going. It's always good to start with clean hands. Quick dip in the bucket. Alright, you can see if you give it a quick squeeze, it'll move out nicely. Now we're going to give it a twist and then pinch it off with our hand. Here we go. Starting from the bottom, moving up. I'm gonna start doing these, and we're gonna go pretty quick. I'll zoom in post, and you'll be able to see how it goes. So you want to find the groove and give it a squeeze. I got it twisted, and I'm squeezing right here with my hand. You can see it going right in there. Here's a quick detail on basically why I take two passes. I like to do one pass to get deep down in there and get a good fill. You can see it filling up as you do your pass. It's a long one here. Get it to fill all the way in the back. Okay, give it a quick twist so it's nice and tight. And then I'll do a second pass going from the top down, and you can see I'm going to fill in. This is more of a finished pass to fill into the edge of the rock, and it will join up with that rough pass underneath it, and it makes it so there's a lot less cleanup at the end, and it gives you a bit better control over the material as you're going. Second pass is your detail pass. Here you go. We'll let that set up just a little bit and I'll show you how to do it on a screwdriver. I'm about ready to make another batch, but in between batches make sure you clean your bag out, because all of those little remnants that are in there while you're making your next batch, they're going to dry up and they'll clog the tip. So clean out your bag first before you do your next batch, and that'll save you a lot of time. Believe me, it is so aggravating when the tip gets clogged, so you really want to do everything you can to prevent that from happening. Alright, so I got my bag all cleaned off. It's sitting in the water. I've cleaned out my mixing bucket here, ready for the next batch. I took some scrap that was in the mixing bucket and I put it on a little pallet here. And so in between batches, what we're going to do is we're going to clean up the overflow and get our grout lines into a nice natural, I don't want to say flat, but we want to get them to the point where it's okay for them to dry. Just so that you can understand, the whole purpose behind setting the grout is to make an average between the levels, and it's not necessarily to make them absolutely flat and level. So let's go over how to do that. First I want to move this pallet over here. My lovely wife has some of that available, so you need to fill in a little gap. And here you can see she's taken a flat screwdriver and just knocking the tips off the rounded edge and making them flat and level. The idea there is you don't want to do it while the grout is really soupy and wet, because it'll gouge out the grout, but you want to do it before it gets really hard, so you want to knock those edges off. And here she's putting in a little bit of fill where there's a gap. So you want to go through all that area and knock it down, make it flat, and we're really focusing on the grout line at this point. Now you can see some places where there's a little bit of grout that got on the stone. Once it gets nice and firm, we're going to go back with a wire brush and knock all those little edges off. Again, during this day, not tomorrow, so it'll still be, you know, brittle and it will come off. It won't become too hard. So we're going to wait until we get to the point where we can knock those off with a wire brush and it'll be nice and clean. All right, let's go ahead and get that next batch all mixed up. All right, so that kind of goes over some of the techniques that you'll need to know in order to grout your natural stone veneer on, you know, in this case it's an outdoor kitchen, but any other kind of project where you're working with a natural stone veneer. But let me walk you through some of the pitfalls and things that you'll run into and how to recover for them. First of all, most of these grouts, they say on the bag what size of a gap that they will allow you to, well, basically what size gap that it will fill. When you have a larger gap like this, what you'll see is you'll get some cracking in here. And the best way to avoid the cracking is to do it in layers. Obviously, this is a really big one. I've only got a couple of small cracks in here, but we've gone through a couple of layers and put it in there, and it works better that way. You just don't want the grout itself to be too thick. And the reason why is you're applying it with too much water to begin with, and when the water is removed, then the material cracks. So that's something to keep in mind, is that if your gaps are really wide, they might crack. The really easy solution is to go ahead and let them crack. You can come back later after everything is adjusted with a little fingerful of grout and just rub it over the top, and it will fill that crack right up, and it won't be a problem. So don't freak out if you get cracks in your grout. Just be ready to straighten them out. So another thing that you can look at is what happens if I get grout on the edges of my stone, right? How do I clean this off? Well, you're not going to rub it off with your hands, right? And whatnot. So let me show you a quick little method that I'm using here to solve this problem when it occurs. Voila! Little wire brush on the end of a cordless drill. Let me show you what this does. It's gone. I mean, it's really not that hard. You can go back through here and clean these up with no problems. So don't freak out if you get a little bit of grout on the edges of some of your stone. You just need to come back and clean them up. Now, we've been working this project over, you know, numerous days, and when you go from one zone to the next, if you leave a little bit unpolished or unfinished, you might have a rough spot. Let me see if I can find one. That maybe you forgot to get to. I don't think I got any here. You've already got them all. But if you have a rough spot, all right, well, here's a good example. Here's the end. I haven't finished this part. It's not done yet. But there's an unfinished section right here, and you can see right here it's kind of protruding out, right? Well, what I got for that is my little vibrating saw with a diamond blade on here. If you have a protrudence or something sticking out and you want to be able to manage that, all you need to do is really quick little vibrating action, and you can clean that away real easy. So, you know, the whole thing to take away from this is any of these mistakes, nothing's permanent. It's really easy to fix it if you have the right tools. And it's really not that expensive. So you shouldn't say to yourself, oh, I can't do that if I'll mess it up. What's going to happen is, you know, you'll start the first day and you'll suck at it. And then as you continue with the project, you'll get better and better. So what I recommend, and another last little note here, is do the part that you're going to see most often last, because then you can build your technique over time and you can get better, and then you get to the point where you're really competent and you can do a really good job on the area that you'll see more often. I didn't do that on this one. I just really wanted to be sure I could get it done, so I did the front first, and I really probably should have done the back first. So anyway, that is grouting on a natural stone surface. Have any questions, comments, make sure you throw them in the comment section. I'd be glad to hear your feedback. I am not a stonemason. I'm just a dude who wanted an outdoor kitchen. I didn't want to spend a lot of money for it, but I wanted it to make it look like I spent a lot of money, so I spent the labor. Save the money, spend the labor, right? So there you go. That's an outdoor kitchen with some natural stone. Cheers.